Welcome to the podcast that will teach you how to successfully invest in and build steady streams of passive income from the highly lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. Veteran real estate investor and fund manager Kevin Bupp, along with his co-host and business partner Brian Spear, will personally share with you the valuable lessons they've learned along their successful journey as a mobile home park investor, so that you too can learn how to create passive income and generational wealth from this extremely lucrative niche. So without further ado, let's welcome your hosts for today's show, Kevin Bupp and Brian Spear.
Welcome, guys and gals, to the Mobile Home Park Investing Weekly Podcast, where we'll provide you with all the information that you need to successfully locate, negotiate, close on, and make huge profits from the lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. I'm your host, Brian Spear, along with my co-host and business partner, Kevin Bupp. And in today's show, we're going to walk you through a couple of case studies on deals that we just went full cycle on. We bought these properties a couple of years ago, completed our value add projects, created some sweat equity, and just sold them off last month for a nice profit. Here's what you're going to learn on today's show. First, how we source these deals off market and how you can do the same thing. What challenges we encountered after acquisition, what we did to overcome those challenges, and how to create sweat equity in mobile home parks, and much, much more. And so with that, I'm excited to get on to the show. But before we do, I have a few quick housekeeping items. First, we're offering a free gift to listeners who take the time to leave a 5-star rating and review. We'll give you guys the same cold call script that we use in our business today, which has helped us purchase tens of millions of dollars of mobile home parks. To redeem your free gift, send an email to gift@mobilehomeparkacademy.com and tell us who you are and what screen name you used to leave your review, and we'll go ahead and get you your free gift. In addition to that, my business partner, Kevin Bupp, has an opportunity for you to schedule a 30-minute complimentary phone call to discuss anything that your heart desires that is real estate related. And it would behoove you to take advantage of that, because that's actually how I met Kevin years and years prior, okay? So if you really want to redeem one of those complimentary phone calls, head over to kevinbupp.com. You can click the Ask Kevin link there and go ahead and schedule your call directly with Kevin. Before we dive into the details on this episode, guys, I just want to say one thing. We actually have these case studies on our website at sunrisecapitalinvestors.com so that you can check them out if you'd like. We've got some really nice drone videos up there of the mobile home parks that we're discussing today, so that you can get an idea of the size and the quality of parks, because it's going to add a little bit of a color to the conversation, okay? In any event, allow me to introduce my co-host for today, Kevin Bupp. Kev, man, it seems like just yesterday that we got these mobile home parks under contract and began performing due diligence on these assets. And it's been several years, man. Time flies.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Brian. And, it's why I got some more grays. That's about it. But I think that we're still good looking dudes. So that's all that matters. We're holding it together personally. But no, it's I'm excited to be here, buddy. And I'm excited to kind of have you run the show here today. So it's nice to switch it up every once in a while. And, we brought you into the last couple of shows. And I mean, you just bring a ton of value. And I think you bring a unique perspective as well. And so I'm excited to be doing these shows with you. And I'm even more excited. I get to take a little break every once in a while and let you kind of run the ship here. So anyway, but I'm excited to talk about these deals. These are, two deals, both that were in New York. And, that first one, Akron, which, you'll run through, and I don't want to give it away, but, it's one of I guess it's the second deal that we bought in our very first fund. And so we've got, some emotional ties to it. We had owned it for a number of years. And, in any event, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to take any of the steam away from you, buddy, but I'm looking forward to going through these two with you, because both of them were unique in and of themselves. And both of them were, they had their own challenges, but we pushed through and we made a lot of money. That's what really comes down to. We made a lot of happy residents, and we made a lot of money in the back end for our investors.
Agreed. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? I mean, you're going to run into problems in any business, specifically real estate, and ultimately it's about solving problems, right? If you can solve those problems, you can create value for everybody in the stakeholder chain. And so let me zip through this case study, and then we can go ahead and reminisce about the ups and downs along the way. So first, we're going to talk about Akron Mobile Home Park. A little quick brief overview here. Akron Mobile Home Park is an all-ages, affordable community that consists of 122 spaces up in Buffalo. And it was acquired through an off-market pocket listing with a local broker who had a personal relationship with the former owner. This thing is a beautiful 4-star community that is entirely tenant-owned homes. Many of the units are newer double wides, and they have breezeways, 2-car attached garages. If you were to drive through that community today, you'd see several different luxury vehicles. And these impressive aesthetics far exceed the stereotypical trailer park stigma, which is all too common in society today. So what was the challenge that we experienced in this particular park? Okay. Save for a couple of water leaks and potholes, Akron was a beautiful community. It was in very, very nice aesthetic condition at closing. That said, it had a ton of issues associated with the P&L. It was wrought with extensive mom and pop expenses, which lowered the asset's value. In addition to that, the community was purchased from a tired legacy owner who had not kept lot rents in line with the market rate. We bought this asset with significantly below market rents, and it was going to end up taking many, many years and a lot of time to recapture that loss to lease. So what did we do? We acquired the park for $3.77 million, and we began working to improve the community. We always inject capital into the community to spruce up the community, improve the lives of the residents, and then ultimately look to recapture some of that loss to lease. We infused some capital to fix the water leaks, make all the necessary road repairs. We negotiated contracts with the landscaping and the snow plowing vendors so that we could lower the recurring ongoing expenses. And then we also went ahead and enlisted Colliers International to perform a market rent analysis. We bought this deal with market rents that were so far beneath the market rate. We wanted to get an idea of what the true market was so that we could put together a plan for everybody involved on how we could bring those rents up to just beneath the market rate over time and ultimately recapture that loss to lease. Colliers came back and conveyed that our current lot rent was $270, but significantly below the market rent of $500. Again, ultimately, it was going to take many years to get that back up to the market rate. And what was the outcome? So prior to sweeping rent control being enacted in the state of New York, we ended up recapturing just a portion of that loss to lease. Over the course of 3 years, we moved lot rents from $270 up to $370. And with the physical occupancy sitting right at 100% and strict rent control in place that was enacted in 2019, we maximized the value of the asset and decided to sell that property. All told, we ended up creating $1 million of sweat equity in 3 years on this particular deal. So it did not come easy. That's a brief summary. And we had some hills and some bumps and bruises along the way. Kevin has a little bit more gray hair, but ultimately it was a really good value add project over the last few years for Fund One. Kev, I mean, reflecting back over that time, man, give me a little bit of a feedback on your experience with Akron. When I say the name Akron Mobile Home Park, what do you think of?
I mean, I got mixed emotions, Brian. I guess I'll step all the way back and just, speaking to the legacy owner himself, and I'll add some additional context there. He actually built this community. Well, let me rephrase that. It was originally one street. I think there was maybe about 20 homes. That was the original mobile home park. And so that was the only old section of this park. It had all single wides. He acquired this small little park through some type of business dealings back in I believe the late 70s. And he went ahead and developed the remainder of the park into multiple different phases. He was just an old farmer. He didn't know how to use a computer. I only had a few conversations with him. It was after we actually bought the park. I never had talked to him prior to that, but I got to, meet him a few different times, and about as unsophisticated again. I mean, really, I'm not saying that in a derogatory way, but just a good old farmer. I mean, that's it. But he did a phenomenal job of building this community. I mean, it was absolutely gorgeous. In fact, Brian, it's the only community that I've been in, or at least that we've owned, or that we've even ever underwritten, to where, it was located in a little village in a suburb of Buffalo, New York. But it was such a nice community and such a desirable community to live in that it was more expensive to buy a mobile home inside the mobile home park than it was a stick-built home in the same village in the surrounding area. Now, comparing same square footage and amenities and things like that, right? You actually might pay a premium to live in the mobile home park versus in a stick-built home. So it goes to tell you, just the sheer quality of this mobile home park. The same goes when we bought it. Most of the time we set aside a fairly significant budget for CapEx improvements. And we did CapEx improvements in this community, but I remember making, not a joke to each other when we bought it, but hey, Brian, like normally we have, like for a park the size, we probably have $150,000 budget, right? For, massive road improvements, massive tree work, just a lot of CapEx that was deferred over the years. With this one, I mean, it was so clean that, we kind of wondered how we were going to, how we were going to spend the budget that we had set aside for it. And because again, just a few potholes and some water leaks, but other than that, the place was absolutely pristine. And, it just, it kind of ties in with the quality of your residents. There's really something to say about, once a community gets to that standard. So if you can ever get your community to that standard to where you got the majority buying into pride of ownership, I think what happens at that point in time, Ryan, is like really the community starts self-policing. And you've got the majority residents that keep up on their lawns. They have nice, landscaping. They've got nice cars. They care about, power washing their units and they've got mold growing on the side of it. They really pressure the other residents that aren't participating into doing that, or they pressure those people out and new people move in. And so I think that's probably what also had occurred over the years in Akron. And just, it helped it maintain its status as a premier community. But, as far as any other emotions tied to that, we had bumps and bruises with the state of New York, with the rent control being enacted, and just, that took a little bit of the wind out of the sails. But at the end of the day, I think what was most important with that, even with the rent control. So we never baked the rent control into our pro forma. How could you, right? We bought this in 2017. So who's got the crystal ball saying that rent control was coming down the pike and that it would get enacted 2 years later? But I think the saving grace, in this case, and then, this is typically how we run our businesses. You make the money on the buy. You guys have all heard that. You make the money on the buy. And in this case, we bought it at the right price. We didn't overpay for it. We didn't buy into that pro forma, which happens a lot nowadays. Can you imagine, Brian? Imagine if the year was 2018 and we bought this on a pro forma that basically showed that we would be able to recapture that loss of lease in the next 2 years or 3 years, whatever. What you pick the time frame, and all of a sudden rent control gets enacted. How's that look?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. That's a scary thought. Not only that, in terms of the loss to lease recapture, but I mean that's kind of how the niche has played out over time, right? When we first started doing this about a decade ago, there weren't a lot of folks going out and going off market direct to owner and allocating a lot of capital to this unique little niche of mobile home park investing. And nowadays, right, a lot of private equity has come in and some of the bigger players have come in, and that's pushed cap rates down precipitously, and it's made it significantly more competitive on the buy side. We've always done a pretty good job of taking your unique core competency, right? I mean, we've been doing mobile home parks for about a decade, but prior to that, you were in single family residential, going off market direct to owner, knocking on doors, sending out direct mail, doing cold calls. That's how you buy 125 single family homes. And when we brought that over here, nobody's doing that. And that's how you can buy with a nice margin of safety. Okay. And we stick to that plan to this day. But a lot of the new entrants don't employ those same exact tactics. They're buying in a much more competitive environment, buying some of their first assets they've ever owned in this industry and buying at a very, very competitive price, looking to implement those value add projects, not too dissimilar to that which you might find in multifamily. But the mobile home park business is a completely different animal. There's a lot more moving parts. And when you underwrite into the pro forma that you're going to bring in XYZ number of homes within the first 6 months or 1 year or 2 years or even 3, 4, 5 years, the truth is it's very, very difficult to know with 100% certainty the absorption rate of all those homes when you come into a new area. So just assuming that you're going to be able to buy on pro forma and implement that value add turnaround, when the truth is that crystal ball is always going to be a little bit fuzzy. You're always going to have a couple skeletons in the closet that you didn't see coming. And I couldn't have imagined the precarious situation we would have found ourselves in had we not bought right. You always make your money on the buy. And, from my perspective, I think that we've bought fewer assets over time than that which we could have. And largely that stems from your cautious nature, and I would say conservative nature, to not get out in front of our skis on the buy side, man.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's bred into me. So, especially after going through the crash of 2008, just watching, the many smart investors of the world, lose tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. And so it's just you never, I shouldn't say it that way, Brian, but you never lose money being conservative. You lose money when you, again, get out in front of your skis, your words. And that's what we try to do in our business day in, day out. And I think using this as an example with rent control, we didn't buy this knowing that rent control was coming down the pike. We knew that, if there was any state where, it would be coming down the pike, New York would have definitely been on top of the list. So would have Illinois and probably a few others. But again, no one's got a crystal ball, and surely it's hard to buy thinking that, well, it might come a couple years down the road, or it might or might not, what have you. But in any event, we did really well with it. That's what the outcome is we did well. The new buyer stepped in. He's an owner that owns a number of assets in New York. So he likes New York. He lives there. He owns other assets there, and he's very ingrained in all the unique politics that exist in New York State. And so to him, it's just like a normal day. To us, we'd rather move on and go find other greener pastures where, the restrictions of things such as rent control don't exist.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, man. We'll stick to the Sun Belt and the Midwest and avoid some of that tenant-friendly legislation. That's our sweet spot, if you will.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here with Sunrise Capital Investors. As you are hopefully already well aware if you've been a listener for any period of time, my goal has always been to provide you with as much value as I possibly can through my two podcasts, Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow and the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. As our audience continues to grow, literally, we've been downloaded millions of times by folks in over 125 countries. I've had thousands of people reach out looking to get involved in our niche, and that's the phenomenal niche of mobile home park investing. Now, for those that don't know, I've been a full-time real estate investor for more than 20 years now, and I've personally invested in and have owned apartment complexes, various commercial properties, hundreds of single-family rentals, and I've interviewed some of the most successful investors in just about every other asset class, and I've arrived at this one very simple conclusion. Mobile home parks are hands down the best investment I've found to date. Why? They provide investors with the best risk-adjusted returns out of any other real estate sector that I've seen. Investing in real estate can get complicated, and I really want to simplify this process for you. If you're someone who wants to diversify away from the uncertainty of Wall Street and allocate a percentage of your real estate portfolio to mobile home parks, but maybe don't have the time nor the inclination to personally locate good deals yourself, then our team will do it for you. At Sunrise Capital Investors, our team specializes in the acquisitions and management of undervalued and highly profitable mobile home parks. And we are now providing accredited investors with an opportunity to participate directly alongside our team in Growth and Income Fund 3. When you invest in our fund, you get immediate diversification into multiple deals we acquired off-market that are already performing and have built-in sweat equity. And let me say this, I believe that we are hands down the best in our space at sourcing highly profitable off-market deals. That's really what makes us unique in this niche and as investment managers. As stewards of your capital, we truly are aligned with our investors. We've structured our investment fund so that we as a company are incentivized in the same way the investor is, which is through the performance of the investment itself. In addition, we want to make sure that we not only make money for our investors, but that they understand how it's being made. That's why we provide our accredited partners with a private monthly podcast that walks them through the detailed updates on how their investment is performing. And we're very transparent, providing you with the good, the bad, and the ugly at times. And so if you'd like to learn more about the partnership opportunities with our team here at Sunrise, please visit us at investwithsunrise.com and request access to the investor presentation. It's absolutely free, and you'll get instant access to review the off-market deals that we've already purchased that you can co-own with our team. Also, feel free to call us at 833-CASH-FLOW without the O. Again, that's 833-227-4359, and our investor relations team will help you schedule an appointment to speak with one of our managing principals. If you have questions, go ahead and schedule the call, and let's jump on the phone. And with that, guys, I'd like to leave with one last thought. From the time that I wake up in the morning till the time that I lay my head down the rest of the evening, my number one priority with everything I do, whether it be recording this podcast, working for our investors, helping each of you reach your investment goals, to providing a great experience to each of our residents who reside in our communities, is to add huge amounts of value to everyone that I come in contact with. Now, with that being said, I look forward to the opportunity of bringing value to you through Sunrise and through this podcast. Thank you for your time. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the show.
Kev, I want to dig just a little bit more on the pushback that we had received from the residents in Akron. As mentioned, we bought this asset with just significantly below market rents. That's what happens when you buy from mom and pops. Oftentimes they don't end up keeping lot rents in line with the market rate. And it's a double-edged sword, right? It's a good thing because we have an opportunity to recapture some of that loss to lease over time and add value to the property, and ultimately use that capital to create some reserves and infuse capital back into the community when those inevitable capital expenditures occur. Too often, the mom and pop operators don't keep lot rents in line with the market rate. And what happens over time is ultimately the infrastructure begins to deteriorate, and they don't have sufficient reserves in place necessary to fix those problems. And then a downward spiral occurs. And that's the exact opposite of the virtuous cycle that you can create by keeping lot rents in line with the market rate and then reinvesting capital back into these communities over time. Nevertheless, when we go in and we add some CapEx in Akron and we fix some of the underground infrastructure, folks don't see that. It's one thing to go in and install a playground or a water park or something that's more visual, a soccer field, some of these other things that you can convey and provide to the residents above the ground. When you go in and fix underground infrastructure, the residents don't really care too terribly much, even though you're fixing the P&L significantly and adding value back into the community. Again, they really don't care too terribly much about that. And for that reason, shortly after acquisition, when we started to do the loss to lease recapture, even though we stood 40, 50% beneath the market rate, residents still were pushing back at our $100 increase over a 3-year horizon. So feedback. Why do you think we got so much pushback there?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm not sure I have the right answer for you because, one of the big things that we did there in Akron is, the residents had approximately a 1-year notice that we were raising rents. And we did something very different there in Akron that we had never done before. And it kind of backfired. And so it's good to be talking about it here. And, we knew that the rents were severely below market. We knew that we were going to do an initial rent increase, but we thought that in the kindness of our hearts that it would be most beneficial to the residents to give them really a 5-year outlook. Really, what do we intend to do over the next 5 years as far as rent increases? Because really our ultimate goal and how we had underwritten the property was to recapture all that lost lease and get to a market rate or get near that market rate within a 5-year span. We thought that it would only be helpful to give them absolute transparency and give them an idea what that schedule is going to look like for the years to come. That way they could prepare, they could plan, and what have you. And unfortunately, Brian, it really did backfire on us. I think part of the backfire probably was caused because of being too transparent. Mm-hmm. I think although that sticker shock was spread out amongst 5 years, at the end of the day, it's still sticker shock. And all they see is like, my rent is doubling. My rent's going to double in the next 5 years. And I think that 5 years might not fully come into context when they think through that. It's my rent's doubling. My rent's doubling. This is crazy. I've never seen anything like this before in my life. And that's the only thing I can really hang my hat on as to why there was such a big blowback, with the rent increase in Akron. And maybe you got some additional thoughts on it, because I think we've talked about this many different times, and it's the only park that we've owned that has ever had this. I mean, you might get a few disgruntled folks, but no one wants their rent to go up. No one wants to have the cost of expenses go up. But it's inevitable. Just like being the owner of a piece of property, your taxes are going to go up. Your insurance is going to go up. Costs continue to rise year after year. And so you always get the few disgruntled residents. But normally it's nothing more than just maybe a letter or a phone call. They might call you a few vulgar names, what have you. That's like a worst case scenario, but never nothing along the lines of what we experienced in Akron.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's a combination, I would say, of a few things. We've hinted at all of them, right? Hinted at the fact that residents weren't viscerally seeing the benefit of the CapEx infused into the property and underground infrastructure. It's easier when you could show them something above ground. That helps, so that they know what they're paying for in terms of the rent increase that's being implemented on an annual basis. In addition to that, I agree with the transparency. We've always been an organization that has prided ourselves on the amount of transparency that we provide to everybody in the entire chain stakeholders, from the residents to the property management squad, all the way through the investors, the entire chain. And this one was probably taking it a little bit too extreme. I think we went a little bit too extreme, providing residents with a 5-year picture and what that looks like. And ultimately, I think they did get a little bit of that sticker shock. And then I would say this one, and I think this is unique to us. Just our visibility online. Because we have such a personal, a public persona, being out there trying to do our best to help as many people as possible through these podcasts, using your 20 years of experience to go out and share all of the wisdom that you've garnered over time, the bumps and bruises along the way, but putting yourselves out there, ultimately, it's a double-edged sword. It's great because it makes you a little bit more well-known, and it can be beneficial. But on the flip side, it can open yourselves up for scrutiny, and sometimes undue scrutiny. But I think that this is part of the shrapnel associated with just living a little bit more of a public life out here. Again, this is what happens when you have a public podcast and a website named kevinbupp.com, right? I mean, you're putting yourselves out there for all the benefits and the drawbacks associated with being out here on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, and also just to add to that, this isn't isolated to just Akron Mobile Home Park. Maybe this particular incident is, but these deals never go as planned, and none of the deals do, right? Like you can map it out. You can spend hours upon hours mapping it out, run multiple pro formas, put your business plan in place, set a budget. But inevitably, there's going to be skeletons that exist in any property, unless it's brand new. Even then, there's probably still some skeletons. But in any event, any used property, like there's going to be things that come out of the woodwork that you didn't anticipate. I mean, it's just part of being a business owner. You've got to kind of duck and weave, and you got to manage your way through it. And I think the important thing is like not letting that one incident consume you. Like if you're looking to grow your business and you're looking to buy more than one property, I mean, gosh, Brian, this was back when, again, we were only into our second property in Fund 1. We had other mobile home parks we owned, but as far as like as a fund structure, we had just launched Fund 1, and we had bought Orange City Mobile Home Park in Florida here, and then we had Akron. And if we had to let this thing consume us, like it kind of did, right? Like it definitely caused some stressful moments. Like we wouldn't be where we're at today. And so I think it's just it's a good example of like you're getting into this business. It's not going to be easy breezy. It's not going to be always a smooth path. You're going to have certain deals that exceed expectations that we thought were going to be challenging, and they turn out way better than we thought. And others that like in Akron, you look at it, you're like, wow, that's a pretty park. It's got a mature resident base. They can all pay their rent on time. They've all got nicer cars than I do. This should be pretty simple. Complete opposite. Yeah. So anyway. And
in any event, all good. It's about solving problems and being adaptable. Couldn't agree more. All great stuff. Love every bit of that. Let's do this. Let's move on to Ridgeview Mobile Home Park and give another case study on this one and talk shop about how that park turned out over time. Ridgeview Mobile Home Park is an all-ages, affordable community consisting of 146 spaces. It is also up in the Buffalo MSA. We acquired this one off-market, direct-to-owner, and we sourced it via a direct mail piece several years ago. Ultimately, when the owner received that original direct mail piece, he reached out to us immediately, but he wasn't quite ready to sell. For multiple years, Kevin continued to foster that relationship. Kevin even flew across the country on a couple of occasions, sat down, broke bread with the owner's family, and talked shop across the dinner table. And eventually, when the owner realized it was time to sell the community, Sunrise received the first call. That is truly how you create value at acquisition. It has to be mutually beneficial. The owner realized he was able to sell for a subtly lower price, but still make a little bit better margin than going through a broker because he didn't have to pay a 5-6% broker commission fee. And we can buy with a nice margin of safety right at acquisition. So what was the challenge with Ridgeview? I would say that Ridgeview had a tired owner. This park was in a phenomenal school district, the best school district around, and it contained several high-end homes, very much like Akron. It had really, really good bones, high-quality infrastructure. The original developer had owned this park for decades, and ultimately, he just became tired. When we took over management, there were potholes throughout the community. There were 12 vacant park-owned homes that needed renovation, and there were massive expenses that were recurring on the P&L that littered the financials. And on the revenue side, average lot rents were $365, and those were well below the market rate. So what we did is we ultimately negotiated a $3.86 million purchase price, and we began the turnaround by fixing all the roads, renovating all of those park-owned home units, all those vacant units, and we replaced the on-site management. We planted some really nice landscaping near the community's entrance to improve all the curb appeal, and then we also added some signage to increase the visibility when folks were driving by the main road there. We also noted that lot rents, when we brought in new residents, we took them right to the market rate of $480, which boosted our average lot rents in the community to over $400 while simultaneously increasing the physical occupancy there. So what was the outcome? Over a 2-year horizon, we were able to substantially increase the NOI, maximize the value of the asset, and create over $1.5 million of sweat equity within 2 years. We had multiple unsolicited offers in a hot seller's market, and we decided to sell that asset this past quarter. We ended up selling it in December of 2020 and generated a really nice rate of return for our investors. So in total, both Akron and Ridgeview, we bought those assets for a combined $7.63 million and sold them for over $10 million, generating a little over $2.5 million along the way for our investors. So, Kev, again, I'll pose this question. When you think about Ridgeview, what do you think about? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Again, I got some close heart ties to Ridgeview as well. I got to know the owner and his family quite well over probably about a 2-year span of time from when I first spoke with him and till we ultimately closed on that deal. And as you'd mentioned, I flew up there on many different occasions and his name was Dick, and he was the son of the parents that kind of started this park many years back. And his father had passed, mother was very elderly, and he had a couple siblings. But Dick basically retired from, I think it was Kodak camera to basically to take over the park. Basically, his mom was getting sick, father had passed, and Dick kind of took one for the team, for the family, because all the other kids basically said, I don't have anything to do with it. They had their own careers, own professions. I'm talking, Dick was like in his mid 40s. So he wasn't like a young kid when he took this over. And so he ran this thing for, 30 plus years. And, when I first met Dick, he was a super nice guy, just a wonderful individual, but he was tired. I mean, like when you really speak about like a tired owner, Dick was there. In fact, he'd probably been there 10 years ago. I mean, you could just tell lots of unfinished projects. He had lots of staff on hand, but never seemingly could get these park-owned homes turned around. The 12 that were there was probably 9 of those that had been vacant for at least 4 or 5 years. I mean, and it just seemed that, any project that was started just never made it to completion just because he was overwhelmed. It seemed like he wanted to be doing other things with his life. And so, but I think the important side of this as well was it wasn't just about money for Dick. This was a place where he had childhood memories. Like literally he used to help his parents mow the grass when it was they expanded it over years, and so like it was originally a smaller park. And so he had the whole family had a lot of emotional ties to this community. It's literally what fed them when they were kids. It's what put them through college. I mean, it's literally what paid the bills. This was the family career, if you would. And so, although they wanted a good dollar amount when they sold it, they weren't willing to sell it to just anybody, right? They wanted someone that would step in and finish, not just carrying the legacy per se, but really finish what the family had started. And so, and that's what we set out to do. And that's ultimately what we ended up doing. And, so it was a fun experience getting to know their families, really rewarding to really grab that torch and carry it from them, and not just say what we're going to do, but do what we say, right? And actually follow through with it and make things happen.
Yeah, to your point, right? Our ability to go in and breathe new life into the community, bringing it back to its rightful place. His family had done such a great job for many years, but over time you just get tired, right? He was ready to retire literally a decade prior, and when he was doing a renovation, those home renovations were phenomenal, right? I mean, those single wide renovations that he was doing. I mean, he would remove the entirety of the siding and implement the new vinyl across the board on all the old 80s boxes, install brand new shingle roofs on some of those old homes, really make those units nice. But he was tired, and he couldn't do all of those projects simultaneously. He needed somebody else to come in and run the entirety of the business and run it more like a profitable operation, bring out some staff to turn those around. And those 12 units weren't vacant because there wasn't demand. Those 12 units were vacant because he couldn't get to all the projects. So we were able to come in, bring some capital, bring some staff, get those homes renovated, bring some new supply back online of affordable housing for folks in the immediate vicinity, and get those leased up very, very quickly. It's a beautiful community, and that's what this business is all about. Being able to add new supply of affordable housing to a market that is in dire need of affordable housing. And when you do that, again, it becomes a virtuous cycle that is an upward spiral that improves the lives of all the residents in that community. And by the time that we were done, that community was in such a nice condition that we actually had an organic move-in. I was talking to Kevin about this a few weeks ago, and he corrected me. I said we had an organic move-in of a resident that called us up and said, "Hey, I'd like to move one of my brand new homes into your community." It was a $100,000 home. Kev stopped me, corrected me. He said that was a $125,000 home that they wanted to bring into the community, Brian. Okay, sorry, my bad. It was a $125,000 brand new home that a resident wanted to bring into the community because it was just so nice, and the value that he was receiving for the plot of land that we were providing him was far in excess of the cost that he would be paying us in lot rent on a monthly basis.
Yeah, no, Brian, that was a super nice home. I mean, really, the park itself is just a gorgeous park, great part of Buffalo there. And as you had mentioned, the school district really, it plays a major role in attracting those types of residents. Now, I will say that in full transparency, that home that was moving in, they were empty nesters. They didn't have a family, but the park was split between 55 plus. There was probably about 60% of it that was 55 plus, and the other 40% that was all ages. And so, the all ages folks, most of them lived there. They had kids, and they lived there specifically for the school district. And it really goes to, when you're out there looking for parks, I see a lot of folks that go shopping based on just the park itself, just the cash flow, or the cap rate or whatever. They're attracted to whatever either the current or the potential future financial performances, but they don't think of the other aspects such as schools. If it's an all ages community and there's kids in that mobile home park, schools are incredibly important. Even folks that make minimum wage, they want their kids to go to the best schools. And you can have I always like to use the analogy or the comparison. Like, you can have a very pretty mobile home park, but if it's in a crappy market and it has bad schools, it's a declining population, businesses are moving away, inevitably you're not going to be able to maintain or withhold that prettiness for a long time. It's probably going to slowly deteriorate over time. However, if you take a really ugly park, the one that or just needs a little bit of polishing or cleanup or capex or just deferred maintenance, what have you, and it's in a phenomenal market with great schools, you can clean it up and you can get rid of any riffraff. This one didn't have riffraff, but you can move the riffraff out, because I can promise you there's going to be good, solid folks that are going to be standing in line to move into your community. And so just, again, this one, you mentioned those 12 vacant homes. We renovated them. They had been sitting for years, and we literally couldn't renovate them fast enough to, with the buyers lining up. And a lot of times when you have old homes like that, Brian, and just knowing from experience, looking at our different assets across multiple different states, I think New York's a little bit of an anomaly, when it came to these older homes, because a lot of these were like 60s, 70s models. They were old, and, we renovated them right. But most of the time with those old homes, you would have to do some type of lease to own, right? You'd have to do some type of creative financing to move them. However, we had, I don't think we didn't do any lease to owns. They were all cash buyers. We had every single one of those vacant units that we renovated, a cash buyer came in and purchased it from us. So, again, I think that's a little bit of an anomaly. I wouldn't say to expect that across the board, but that just goes to show how good that market was and how good the school district and just the surrounding area was. So with that, Ridgeview is a great deal. Again, I've got some personal heartstrings tied to it with Dick and his family, but I do feel at the end of the day, it was rewarding. And I think that we did exactly what we said we were going to do. And I haven't talked to Dick for probably about a year or so. I haven't talked to his family, but I would guess to say that they would in turn say that they were proud that they sold it to us, and that we, ultimately carried through with their legacy and, again, carried that torch and did that park justice. Yeah,
I agree. Again, in order to create a mutually beneficial arrangement, a mutually beneficial deal, it has to be a win-win for all parties involved. And those are the best ones. When you can walk away from the table and both parties feel good about what just happened, especially when you've gone full cycle on it. and looking back, again, proud to say that we were able to accomplish some pretty great things up in the state of New York prior to rent control being enacted. And once we found that out, it was kind of the slow closing of a door, knowing full well that at some point we'd like to get out of that particular market and repurpose that capital back to the Sun Belt in the Midwest, which is more in the heart of our strike zone, I would say. But in any event, Kev, great stuff, man. Love every bit of that. Anything else that you'd like to talk shop about regarding either Akron or Ridgeview before we close this one out?
I don't think so. I mean, I just, you're listening to this, and so you're looking to buy a mobile home park or you already own them. Either way, but you got to be patient in this business. I mean, it takes time, and the best deals are worth waiting for. And like the Ridgeview is a perfect example. We've got many other examples. We didn't just pick like the best two. These just happen to be two deals that we sold very recently. But good deals are worth waiting for, and they're worth you taking the time to build relationships with the owners and you'll get to know them, especially these older mom and pops that I can promise you that a lot of these older mom and pops, yes, they want maybe not the highest dollar amount, but they want a fair price for their property. But they also, a lot of them have emotional ties because they've probably owned it. Maybe they built it, but at least they've been in it. They've been running it for, 20, 30, 40 plus years. They want something to come along that's going to, in their mind, take over that legacy. Even if the park needs work, in their mind, a lot of times it doesn't need work, and they still are very proud of it. And they want someone to come in and take over that legacy for them, something that they've built with their own hands. And it takes a lot of, patience to get to that point with some of these owners. So anyway, just know that the deals are out there. You just got to dig for them. And that's it, Brian. That's all I got, buddy.
Yeah, I love that. Oftentimes the best opportunities and those great rewards, they lie just on the far side of patience. It took many, many years to get that under contract and ultimately to closing, and then a couple more years still to ultimately implement the value add business plan. But the long-term same store NOI growth in this niche is higher than any other asset class out there. And if you're able to buy right and be patient over time with these phenomenal assets, then you and your family will be well served by allocating a percentage of your portfolio to mobile home parks. It's done well for everybody on the call, and we only wish you the best along your investment journey, guys. So with that, that's all I have for today. I appreciate you, and I wish you nothing but success in this incredible investment niche of mobile home park investing. If there's ever anything that we can do to help you along your investment journey, don't hesitate to ask, guys, okay? Until next time, you be great.
Congratulations for taking the necessary steps to achieving massive success through the highly lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. To learn more about partnership and passive investment opportunities with Kevin and Brian, please visit www.investwithsunrise.com. Also, be sure to visit our website, www.mobilehomeparkacademy.com, to download your free digital ebook version of the 21 biggest mistakes investors make when buying their first mobile home park and how you can avoid them.